Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 381, and today's date is June 3rd, 2014, and the title of this episode is Warning, 2 Weeks to Prepare for a Cyber Attack on Bank Accounts. And right now, there is a warning out there telling us there is a cyber attack coming, and we need to be prepared for what is about to happen, because we understand the United States government, the central bankers, are completely losing control around the world. We take a look at the Middle East. What do we see? Well, we see the people in Libya. They are rising up. They are fighting back. They are trying to push out that puppet regime, and they are doing it at this time. This is why the United States has come in and brought in a assault ship that is off the coast of Libya with 1,000 Marines. We have countries telling their people to get out of the country at this time. There are travel advisories, warnings, and we know something is about to happen there. Syria, there are elections happening right now. Assad is favored to win, and right now it looks like he is going to be the winner. No real surprise there. And we understand in Jordan there are 13,000 plus soldiers training in a drill at this time. And we realize that there have been reports out there saying that Assad has been hiding chemical weapons, hiding biological weapons. They will not let the 7 to 8% chemical weapons stash out of the country at this time. The paid mercenaries are instructed to keep it inside the country. We understand Obama was out there saying Assad has no future whatsoever in Syria. They kicked out all the government officials inside the United States, closed the embassies, then brought in the paid mercenary and said, now you are the acting government at this time, our puppet regime, and we will be dealing with you. The United States doesn't want Geneva III talks. They don't want to talk about anything else except removing Assad at this time. And we see what's happening in Ukraine. Ukraine is completely falling apart. They are maneuvering and bombing Donetsk, Lugansk, Kharkov, and it's continuing. They're using their anti-terrorism forces against Ukrainian people, and we already understand that there are paid mercenaries inside the country handling this at this time. And from all that we've seen and everything that's been happening, our government officials have continually reminded us of what? A cyber 911, a virtual Pearl Harbor, so we know that they are planning to do something. We know that something is happening, and in the past couple of months, they've been showing us these cyber attacks against Target, Neiman Marcus. Of course, they've been using this to create their executive orders and to get CISPA passed, but they've also been letting the public know that we are vulnerable to this type of an attack. And we understand that the stock market, the BAT system, the NASDAQ, all have kill switches implemented at this time. So when the market comes down, they will have the ability to stop it. And right now this report is out there, and it's saying that you can expect something big to happen. And this is what we've been telling everyone to prepare, not to keep that much money in the bank. And again, this is my personal opinion. I try only to keep what I need in there to pay bills, and that is it. The rest is in physical assets, because a cyber attack cannot hit, can't do anything to physical assets. And if you have your money, your currency in your hands, you don't have to worry about that. And we understand what they need to do, because we understand that the economy is completely crumbling apart. It is falling apart right in front of our eyes, and we see what's happening around the world. There are countries and central banks that are removing the dollar from reserves, and they're adding other currencies, like the yuan, renminbi. China is out there making deals all over the place. We see UK just became a clearinghouse for the yuan/renminbi. We understand that New Zealand has bilateral trade agreements with China, and China is continually doing this around the world. And we realize that the private Western central bankers do not like this. This is a direct threat, and this is why they've been placing their military assets all around the world, encircling Russia and China and containing them. And we're going to get into a little bit more about this cyber attack on these bank accounts a little bit later in this report. But let's get into the economic collapse news. And what are we seeing right now? Well, of course, they're coming out and they're continuing with their illusions, letting us know that the economy is recovering and we feel that everything is getting better. And right now, U.S. factory orders are doing better than they expected. But of course, if you remove the defense orders, actually factory orders declined by 0.1%. But of course, when you include it, it looks like they have gone up to 0.7%. So really what's happening here, they are manipulating numbers, putting things in there, making it look like we are doing much, much better than we really are. And right now, what is happening, the major financial institutions are now shorting treasuries. Institutional clients have not been this short on treasuries since 2006. JP Morgan's clients survey exposes as the end of this last week, active clients were adding to their shorts. Now, I wonder why they're doing this, because we see China, we see Russia, and other nations selling their treasury bonds, and we see Belgium or a private institution within Belgium purchasing these treasury bonds. They're picking up the slack for the Fed. Of course, the Fed here in the United States has to show us that, we're in a recovery and we're tapering. We're no longer doing this stimulus, but in reality, they really are. All they're doing is channeling money to other places, and they're picking up the slack. But they need to keep everyone in the dark. They have to make sure that you believe we are in some type of recovery. Now, we understand that Congress definitely does not work for the people. And an article out of the End of the American Dream, it seems like the senators are, at least half of them, are millionaires. Now, again, how are these millionaires representing the everyday person? Well, they're not. They're on a completely different level. They do not represent us at all, and we can see this has happened. This is the first time that it happened in U.S. history at this time. And again, when we look at government, it was supposed to be a mixture of the people. They were supposed to represent each facet of life here, and we're supposed to have, maybe a lawyer, maybe a factory worker up there, maybe an accountant, maybe a store clerk, and they were supposed to do this part-time. But of course, our government decided to make this a full-time job, give them the best benefits, the best pay, the best of everything, all the perks, almost like royalty, and that's what we are seeing right now. Now, Russia and China, like we said, they are making agreements with themselves and with many other nations. Russia and China have agreed to set up a joint ratings agency to assess common projects. The issue of setting up independent ratings agency is being discussed. Many countries would like rating agencies to be more objective. In this respect, we have agreed on further cooperation. A Russia-Chinese rating agency will be created using the same instruments and criteria as other rating agencies to assess investment projects of regions and countries. The Russian minister stressed the plan was to make the agency apolitical. Other contracts include a deal with Russia Railways and China Railway Cooperation to cooperate on construction of railway infrastructure at bordering crossings and the routes leading up to them to increase the capacity of railways. They are making other agreements, like in the Aircraft Cooperation and the Chinese COMAC Cooperation signed a memorandum on a cooperation in the prospective program for a wide-body long-haul passenger aircraft. And they're also making a deal and an agreement with the largest Chinese car manufacturer. Great Wall Motors announced that it will launch a plant in Tula region in 2017. The investment in the project will amount to 12 billion to 18 billion rubles, and they are pushing this agenda forward. They are making more and more deals. They're cooperating on pretty much everything, and we're seeing now that the lines have been separated. We have the BRIC nations. We have those nations that do not have the private Western Central Bank. They're not controlled by the private Western Central Bank. And then we have the other nations, the West nations, that are controlled by the private Western Central Banks. Russia and China are expected to cooperate in the monetary policy sector. A report from the World Bank's International Comparison Program earlier this year estimated that China could topple the U.S. economy as the world's biggest in 2014. The two countries, both members with the BRICS economic bloc of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, have long been vying to replace the U.S. dollar as the number one global exchange currency. And you can see everything that they're doing, that is the direction they are headed. Now, we have to remember, the United States and the central bankers will not let this happen. They will go down kicking and screaming. They rather start a war, and they will need some type of an event to make this happen. And we can see already with this 2-week warning at this time that this could be the foundation, the path that is leading up to the major event. The Russian financial chief is meeting with a panel of Chinese investors to weigh up the outlooks for mutual investment programs. They are also expected to sign a cooperation agreement for closer ties between the Russian and Chinese Treasury departments. So they are moving this full steam ahead. They are not looking back, and they are trying to get this all done. The United States central bankers realize this, and this is why they have been moving all the military assets and beefing up the funding towards the military. Even though it might look like they haven't, they have increased their budget on nuclear weapons. They are now telling NATO to increase their budget, and we can see the Obama administration is laying out more and more money to beef this up because they realize what is about to happen is that they're going to start this war, they're going to provoke another country, and they're not going to stop until they get this war started. We see it in Ukraine at this time. The United States central bankers are pushing the puppet regime, the bankers are pushing the puppet regime, and they're saying, do not stop until you take control of Ukraine. We don't care if you kill women, children, the people, it doesn't matter. You continue with the assaults. Do not let up, and we're going to see this happen here in the United States, in Europe. They're going to continue with this. They're going to maintain control, especially when this event hits and people are pissed, angry, and we see riots and the economy is falling apart. We are definitely going to see them come out and start taking control of what is happening here in the United States. Now, one way to do this is they need to disarm the American people. And they've tried so many different things. There's mass shooting after mass shooting. We see a lot of these are being staged to push their agenda. We understand there is a Dianne Feinstein gun bill pending in the Senate. We also understand that there is the UN Arms Treaty pending in the Senate, and they want both of these passed. They'll do anything they possibly can to get these things through. President Obama has already created all these executive orders on mental illness, and right now, since this last mass shooting in Santa Barbara, it looks like there's a mental health and gun violence bill going around and being introduced. This is very dangerous because there is no type of requirement on who has mental illness. It's not like you push a button and say, oh yes, he's mentally ill, because you have to remember this is just all willy-nilly on how they're saying that someone has some type of mental illness. And I'll give you some examples of this. First of all, the definition of mental health issues will no doubt be added to over time, including those definitions that could apply to any one of us. A man or woman holding a legal weapon to protect their family will become a paranoid personality, overly concerned and, dwelling on the possibility of home invasion. The hockey mom who carries a weapon in a glove box to defend against potential carjackers, or worse, will be rebranded as a risk to mankind due to her overwhelming urges to shoot anyone approaching her car. The list will continually grow. They'll be able to put this label on anyone and cite them as mentally ill and take away their weapons, and this will continually go on and on and on until they get all the weapons. This is a tactic they are using at this. And you have to remember, this goes right into Obamacare if you really think about it, because think about all the forms when you see your doctor now. Is there a gun in your home? And these are the check boxes that you have to answer. Or if you're like me, I just leave them blank. I feel it's none of their business, and I do not have to answer these types of questions. Okay. Now, Russia is going to suspend cooperation with PACE. Moscow has officially informed the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe about its decision to halt bilateral cooperation and skip the summer session. The Russian delegation will not take part in June's session of PACE because they believe that these sanctions need to be lifted before they can cooperate in this organization, and this is why they're like kind of boycotting this at this time. Now, we understand that Ukraine paid a little bit of money, and Gazprom/Russia said, yes, we received the $786 million. And Russia and Ukraine are in gas talks right now. They're talking about the prices, and it seems like they've kind of made an agreement right now, and it's still on the table, and it looks like they're agreeing around $350 to $380 per 1,000 cubic meters. But again, we'll have to see how this goes and plays out, because they do have a payment coming up in June 9th, and we'll have to see how that plays out as time goes on. Now, we understand the puppet regime in Ukraine is not stopping. They are continuing with the attacks on Lugansk. They are firing weapons into innocent civilians. They haven't stopped. Actually, they're looking to intensify this. And right now, Moscow is slamming the Ukraine for these military attacks because it kind of coincides with top U.S. defense officials and their visit to Kiev. So they might have had a say in what is going on here. And we can see that Poroshenko is completely part of this puppet regime. They are really moving this forward. And Kiev admitted an intense air attack in Lugansk area, saying that its Air Force helicopters and jets fired more than 150 missiles into Ukrainian people. And they didn't care who they hit, because these aren't guided missiles. These are just, rockets going anywhere. They could hit anything, and they are just hitting anything they possibly can. And this is absolutely horrific. This is uncalled for. And of course, the United States central bankers and the NATO countries are all out there saying, Russia's to blame, Russia's to blame. No, you're the blame, because you're the ones who are controlling all of this. Actually, what does Russia have been doing? What have they been doing? They pull back their troops that were having a drill on the border. They're nowhere to be seen, and all we hear about is this anti-terrorism force using extreme force on the people of Ukraine who do not want to be part of the puppet regime. That's all we see. Now, we see the opposite in Syria. They've been saying that, Assad has been coming down on his people. He uses force, deadly force, and this is why we're backing the opposition. Well, over in Ukraine, we see the United States government, central bankers backing the puppet regime and firing and killing the people of Ukraine. So really, we could see what's going on here. They don't give a crap about the people. They care about if they're in power. Do they have the control? And this is a huge lesson that we should all take a look at, because when everything completely falls apart and the economy comes down and implodes on itself, just think of what they're going to do here in the United States. If they're this deadly out there across the ocean, what do you think is going to happen here? Why do you think they created the DHS? Why do you think they're sitting there dormant? Why do you think they've been spying? Why do you think they've been creating these lists? Well, we're going to discuss that a little bit later in this report, but think about that for a second. Now, Moscow is urging the NATO Council to have Kiev they want them to completely stop these military operations at this time. Russia has urged the Russia-NATO Council to demand from the Kiev authorities to immediately stop a military operation in the southeast of the country, as well as to comply with the Geneva Accord. Well, they're not going to stop. They're going to bring it to the UN Security Council, and we'll see if the United States says, oh yeah, oh my God, they're doing this. No, they'll probably veto it and continue on and intensify what they've been doing. Now, there's a report out there saying that China poses a huge threat to U.S. carriers, the Chinese cruise missiles. Saturation strikes from Chinese and anti-ship cruise missiles could become the biggest threat to U.S. Navy carrier strike groups, according to a paper issued by the Center for the Study of Chinese Military Affairs at the National Defense Universities. And we can see that they're very concerned about this. They've been encircling China, bringing in military assets, missile shields, and 60% of the U.S. fleet is in the Pacific at this time, containing China. And also we have the same thing going on with Russia at this time. Now we understand that South Korea is getting the THAAD missile system, and what we are seeing right now is that the U.S. military has shared its Patriot operations manual with the South Korea as part of a broader effort to foster bilateral missile defense interoperability. And we know what this is all about. They are giving them ammo. They are creating the shield between South Korea, Guam, and Japan. They're all facing North Korea and China, and they are continually pushing this agenda of encircling and creating shields against China at this time. And there's also a missile shield which is formed now in Europe, going down from Poland all the way to Romania. They have brought in sophisticated missile weapons, and we understand that this, from yesterday's report, these missile shields are going to be used after the first strike of a nuclear attack against Russia and China to stop the missile attacks coming back to the United States. And this is why this is being put into place. Now, U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel, he is out there and he's telling NATO countries to increase their military spending in response to recent events in Ukraine. Speaking at a meeting of alliance defense ministers in Brussels, the U.S. defense chief implored NATO to come to grips with the potentially dire consequences of current trends in reduced defense investment. The United States has routinely urged other member states of the 28-country alliance to ratchet up their defense spending. We cannot shrink from this challenge, Hagel said. We must reaffirm the security guarantees that lie at the heart of this alliance, and we must hold fast to those guarantees by summoning the will to invest in revitalized NATO. NATO ministers have agreed to draft a readiness action plan on long-term measures for increasing defense in Eastern Europe. So they are building up NATO because they understand when they start this war with some type of an event, they need them to increase personnel, they need them to increase NATO military assets, and they really need to start spending now. Obama is out there and saying the United States will lead in this, and he's going to give and pledges $1 billion for more troops, more military aid to NATO in Eastern Europe. President Obama has announced a plan to invest $1 billion in stepping up its military presence in Eastern Europe amid the Ukrainian crisis. The White House will send more troops and equipment to the region to reaffirm its commitment to NATO allies. The moves are aimed at upping the pressure on Russia, which Washington has accused of inciting unrest in Ukraine. And of course, let's say this makes no sense whatsoever, because when Ukraine was, when they had riots during the presidency of Yankovic, this was for democracy, freedom. The people had the right to speak. The people had the right to riot. They want something different. And now the people of Ukraine don't want to be a part of this puppet regime because they realize it was a coup d'etat. Most of them are Russian. They don't want to belong to this type of government. They want to be separate and apart. But of course, these people don't have rights. They don't have democracy. They don't have the freedoms, because now they are terrorists. One day they were everyday civilians. The next day they're terrorists. And they started up the anti-terrorism forces. And Obama went on to say, under this effort and with the support of Congress, the United States will pre-position more equipment in Europe. We begin rotating additional ground troops and F-16 aircraft into Poland to help our forces support NATO air missions. So we can see where we are headed at this time. They are definitely preparing, and they're using the excuse that Russia is the problem. And we have to remember that the United States and the EU set up this coup d'etat. They spent $5 billion on this. They brought in this puppet regime. They already had them picked out way before this even occurred, and they brought in paid mercenaries, military weapons. They siphoned it into the country, and they had the players act out like the people were very upset, and they built up the riots. And they went in, they signed an agreement, a peace agreement, they went against it, and they overthrew the government in Ukraine. And at the same time, they started taking over. They started creating anti-terrorism forces to stop those people who were against the puppet regime. This is how they work. They do it the same way in every single country. They went into Libya, Lebanon, Yemen, Iraq. They did the same exact thing. And if you're part of the puppet regime, everyone else is called a terrorist because you're not part of our government. This is how it works. But the people in the Middle East right now, they are the terrorists. They are Al-Qaeda. They're fighting back for their country. They're just the everyday person in the country, and they want their country free from the private Western central bankers. They want them free of the United States government. But the United States needs to maintain control in the Middle East. They're losing control in Libya, as we know. Yemen, the riots are getting worse. The people are rising up. So the United States has launched plans to export military aircraft to Yemen now. 4 intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft for the Yemen Air Force are being shipped over there, up to 10 two-crew member aircraft that contain ISR systems, as well as AGM-114 Hellfire air-to-ground missiles for attacks on the people of Yemen. So we can see how this is playing out. They are continually bringing in more and more military assets. We have to understand they've also created this fund, and I forgot, I think it was like $5 billion or so, to help create these anti-terrorism forces throughout the Middle East, in Ukraine and Africa, so these countries can create their own forces to combat the people rising up. And we can see that this is really not working out well, and they're doing everything they possibly can to fight back the people. Now, in Syria, we understand the elections are going on, and what's very interesting is that Turkey, as we know, a couple months ago, tried to stage this false flag event. And what they did was they had military personnel in Turkey. They belonged to Turkey. They snuck in to, this is their plan, this is what they wanted to do. They wanted to sneak into Syria carrying handheld missiles, and they wanted to fire them back into Turkey to make it look like Syria was attacking Turkey. So this way, NATO could get involved and move into Syria. This was a false flag event, and this is why Erdogan put a stop to Twitter and YouTube and blocked them completely, because a video was leaked that this was a complete setup. They had him recorded, and he had them blocked. This is what we're talking about. So the Turkish government is now, of course, they're taking instructions from the United States central bankers. They're part of NATO, and they are now taking this to the next step. The Turkish government recently cut off the flow of the Euphrates River, threatening primarily Syria, but also Iraq with a major water crisis. And what we're seeing right now, the levels in Lake Assad has dropped by about 6 meters, leaving millions of Syrians without drinking water. 2 weeks ago, the Turkish government once again intervened in the Syrian crisis. This time, it was much different from anything they had attempted before, and the repercussions of which may bring unprecedented catastrophes onto both Iraq and Syria. Water supplies in auxiliary reservoirs in the Al-Kahfa are close, that's a hard word for me to say, are close to being depleted, and the reservoirs are expected to run out of water completely by tonight or tomorrow morning at the latest. This threatens to leave 7 million Syrians without access to water. So they're trying to pretty much cut off the water supply. And you know what's funny? We see the same thing happening in Ukraine. They built a temporary dam to cut off the water supply to Crimea. They are the same exact paid mercenaries. The United States central bankers are doing the same thing in both places at the same exact time. Now, Iran is backing the Syrian election choice. A senior Iranian official says Tehran supports the choice of Syrian people as Syrians go to the polls in the long-awaited presidential election in the hope of ending the crisis in the country, because they're saying if Assad, and we know he will be elected, once he's elected, there is no reason for these paid mercenaries to be here. The people have spoken. The people have said, you know what? This is our president. So this opposition, the whole story the United States central bankers they've been telling is completely false, fake, and phony, pretty much just like everything else they've been telling us. And we can see that the Syrian elections have been extended for 5 more hours right now. They want to give more people the chance to vote, and there's over 15 million Syrians that are eligible to cast their vote in more than 9,000 offices in government-controlled areas. And they do the voting the old-fashioned way with paper. You take your vote, you fold it, and you put it in a box. It's not electronic. It can't be electronically manipulated. And of course, what do we have out there but the United States? U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has pronounced the Syrian elections to be a complete farce. And CNN is out there saying, and they reported that the opposition and Western countries say it's impossible to hold a vote when rebels are holding much of the north and east of the country. And they say the elections won't be free or fair, that it'll be rigged and Assad declared the winner. You know, you can't have this when there's like a civil war going on. You mean like in Ukraine, where most of the country didn't even vote and they had an election? Or how about Afghanistan or Iraq? Or how about in the United States in 1864 amidst the U.S. Civil War? So what they're saying is complete propaganda. It's all BS. Okay, now we understand there was a U.S. national that went on a suicide bombing run in Syria, and the United States government, central bankers are quite worried about this, because this person was from the United States, and he was radicalized, and he did a suicide bombing, and what they're saying right now is that there are a lot of people that are traveling, of course, to Syria, because Syria is the launching pad of terrorists that are radicalized that will be returning to the EU, UK, and the United States, and they're very worried because the United States government is saying that, we don't have the ability to track these type of people. The country is a bit of a black hole, and they're referring to Syria, and once someone enters Syria, we completely lose track of this person, and they can return to the United States at any time, and we really don't know who they are. So we have a bit of a problem, and we're very concerned about this. And of course, what are they doing? They are building up the propaganda for the next event. They're trying to make us believe that all these people are going to be coming back. They're bomb makers. They're breaking off into lone wolf groups. They can't be tracked whatsoever. And we see proof that they are willing to take their own lives to create some type of an event. And we've seen what has been going on in the United States. We see out in California a National Guard person. He was reading the Al-Qaeda magazine, getting ideas on how to create a bomb, and we can see that they're saying that these are homegrown terrorists. Yesterday I reported on this man, Chamberlain, who was the FBI put out a national advisory, a manhunt to find this person because he had explosives. He was very dangerous, and they actually caught him. And they're releasing information because he posted some information on his social accounts. And in a letter written on an iCloud account, Chamberlain talks about dealing with depression issues with his family and trouble with relationships and career. He details his downward spiral, which came to a head in 2013 when he lost his job when he was a sports event management manager at a sports event management company. And in 2013, it did me in. I've been fighting and fighting to get out of it, but it wrecked me, and it led me to what happened today, the letter reads. It appears the note was written after he was contacted by the FBI. Very interesting. The FBI always seems to be involved in these things. I got dark. I got really dark. I explored myriad ways of, how can I put it, an end to what I was going through. I binged watched dark TV. Sometimes didn't get off the couch for days. Scoured the internet, absorbing and fueling my morbid fantasies of economic collapse and war and the government's after me. And you can see what they're building this up to be. And what has happened out of this is that Holder now is creating the homegrown terrorist task force. It has begun. Remember when we talked about the NSA, DHS, fusion centers, social profiles, correlating all this information, creating lists of people that will be a threat to the government officials? Well, here we are. Attorney General Eric Holder on Monday announced the creation of a task force within the Justice Department to combat an escalating danger from homegrown terrorists within the United States. Holder's weekly video address cited a Congressional Research Service report last year that said domestic terrorists were responsible for more than 24 incidents in the U.S. since 9/11. Holder in the video cited the Boston Marathon bombing last year and the shootings at Fort Hood in 2009 and 2014 as examples of this danger we face from these homegrown threats. The task force will be chiefly comprised leaders from the FBI, the Justice Department National Security Division, and U.S. attorneys called the Domestic Terrorism Executive Committee. Holder's version is aimed at U.S. citizens or visitors radicalized via the Internet. So you can see what is happening right now, and you can see where the NDA plays into this. Because once they find these homegrown terrorists, wait a minute, they're us. You're on the Internet, you're looking at things that are morbid, that are against the government. You are now a homegrown terrorist. They'll be watching you. You'll be put on a list. Actually, this is almost like the SS, if you really think about it. Now there's a special task force to investigate the United States citizens, the people of America, to see if they are a threat to the United States government, the powers that be. They're not looking for outside terrorists anymore. No, that's done. They already know. They're the ones who do it. They're looking inside for you and me. This is what they're doing. They're taking it to the next level. Like I said, here is the mini task force going out, using those lists, keeping an eye on these people, hunting them down. This is how it begins. This is how it starts. And soon you will see DHS being activated. You'll see a complete different side of them. You will see them come out. They won't be the friendly, soccer-playing, award dinners. They will be military. They will be ready to rock and roll. They will be ready to control the people. They will be ready to protect the U.S. government authorities. And this is where we're headed. Now, there is a report out there that the Federal Bureau of Investigation has put Russia citizen, I'm going to try to pronounce his name, Evgeny Bokovich, on the list of the most dangerous hackers. Bokovich has created the most complicated system of hacked computers the FBI has ever faced. And guess, of course, he's from Russia. He created the system of hacked computers, the Game Over Zeus, or Go Zeus. And now we have the 2 weeks to prepare for the cyber attack on bank accounts. So what is happening right now? Computer users are being urged to protect their machines from malware which could allow hackers to steal financial data, access bank accounts, and withdraw savers' funds. British investigators have been working with the FBI to trace the hackers behind an attack which they expect to take place in the next fortnight. Between 500,000 and 1 million machines have so far been affected worldwide, according to the court documents. U.S. officials have accused a Russian hacker of masterminding this entire scam because he's from Russia, and we have to be afraid of Russia. The National Crime Agency is now warning of a powerful computer attack. It is urging people to back up important files and make sure the security software and operating systems are up to date. Two pieces of malware software known as Game Over Zeus and CryptoLocker are responsible for the alert. GoZeus, it silently monitors activity and tries to capture information such as bank details. So we can see what's happening. These malware and other malware sitting dormant on all the banking systems, in the ATM machines because they're run by XP, and they're all sitting there ready to be activated. Now, if this really does occur, it will bring down the financial institution. It will halt the banking system to a screeching halt, because we do not know how many computers inside the financial institutions have been affected, especially those people in the United States, in Europe. We can see that this could be a full-fledged cyber attack to bring the economy to its knees and blame, of course, another country. And this is why we've all been saying that we need to only keep, and this is my personal opinion, to keep those funds that you only need to pay bills. Other funds need to be removed, and your assets should be in physical, so that can't be touched. And we also understand that these countries, United States, UK, Europe, Switzerland, Australia, Canada, have all created some type of bail-in documents to go into the banks and take the money and freeze the accounts, just like they did in Cyprus. They wouldn't have created these documents if they weren't going to use this. And we have to remember that this economy is completely falling apart. They understand it. The debts of all these nations are continually rising. The IMF, the World Bank have been out there saying, you know what, this cannot be sustained. This cannot go on. This is not good. Even the former Fed chairman, Volcker, said, we need to restart this system. We need a new Bretton Woods. This one cannot be sustained. So we can see what they've been planning. We understand what they've been doing. And I would even expect lights to go out. If this thing actually goes forward, and again, they're going to get a green light, they're going to get a red light. Green light, it's a go. Let's move forward with this. Let's knock everything out, and we can actually see something happen. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.